and Councilor Zachem. Madam President,
Oh.
Mr. President, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'm totally open. I've been informed by the clerk that there is a quorum present. At this time, I would like to ask all councilors and guests to please rise. After the invocation is delivered, I would like to ask all members and guests to remain standing as Councilor Edwards leads us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilor Edwards.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my honor to introduce Father Tom Conway, who is originally from Long Island, New York. Before becoming a friar, Father Tom worked as a New York State auditor. After volunteering at St. Francis Inn at the province's soup kitchen in Philadelphia, he decided to answer the call for religious life. He joined the Order of Friars, Friars Minor in 1988 and was ordained in 2005. In addition to a master's degree in theological studies from the Washington Theological Union, Father Tom holds a doctorate in accounting from the University of Maryland. Father Tom has served in a variety of ministries, including teaching, parish ministry, administrative work, and spiritual information director for student friars. In 2013, he was assigned to St. Anthony Shrine. So it is with my honor that I get to introduce Father Tom.
Thanks for inviting me and having me here. One of the things that the Shrine is known for, of course, is being Catholic, but I hope that one of the things that we're also known for is being welcoming to all different kinds of people, and perhaps this time of year, it's more important than ever just to be aware that not everybody thinks the way you do, the way I do. Other people have lots of different perspectives, and I think maybe the most bold and quickest way that I can tell you that we try to be open to other folks at the Shrine is we're a Catholic church and we have an LGBT ministry, and we have folks that speak all different kinds of languages among the friars and the staff, Japanese, Korean, Mandarin, Cantonese, Spanish, Italian. People come in and they need different things, and we try to be open to them. We have these great big banners of all are welcome. So I think at this time of year especially, it's just good to be aware that we need to be open to other folks. Folks are going to come through the door, our doors, and just to be open to all the different possibilities of where people are in their lives, what's important to them. I'm really grateful to be in this city. I've been here 5 years now. This is an incredible city. We get 1 million visitors at the Shrine. A big percentage of the people walk through the door are from out of town, and you folks have set the tone as a welcoming city, a place where different kinds of folks are welcome, and we see that very much downtown. So it's in a spirit of gratitude, really, that I'm here, that we pray for your work today, in Thanksgiving for the goodness, for your welcoming as a council, as a city, to bring people together, to be open to other perspectives. Blessings on your work today, blessings on your families, all good things. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, Father. Okay, thanks. Thank you, Father Tom, for your words, and also thank you, Councilor Edwards. Okay. Madam Clerk, please amend the attendance report to include Councilor Presley.
So we have 8 left. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. If there are no corrections to be made, the minutes of the last meeting will stand approved. Seeing and hearing no objections, the meetings are so approved. Communications, the Mayor, from His Honor the Mayor, Madam Clerk.
Mr. President, would you like me to read docket number 1782 through 1785?
Yes.
Docket number 1782, notice is received from the Mayor of the appointment of Shumani Benford as Chief of the Office of Emergency Management effective December 10th, 2018. Docket number 1783, notice is received from Councilor Janey regarding her absence from the December 12th meeting of 2018 City Council meeting. Docket number 1784, communication was received from Councilor at Large Ayanna Presley, submitting a report on the 2017 Early Education and Child Care Policy Briefing Series. And docket number 1785, notices received from the city clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the ordinances of 1979 regarding action taken by the mayor on papers acted upon by the city council at its meeting of November 28th, 2018.
Thank you, Madam. Dockets 1782 through 1785 will be placed on file. Matters recently heard for possible action.
Docket number 1538, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $200,000 in the form of a Community Mitigation Fund Transportation Planning Grant from the Massachusetts Gaming Commission to be administered by the Boston Transportation Department. The grant will fund engineering and design services for the reconstruction of Sullivan Square / Rutherford Avenue in Charlestown.
Madam Clerk. Okay. Chair recognizes Councilor Wu, Chair of Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The committee held a hearing on two dockets recently. I think we'll get to the other one later. But this particular one, I wanted to thank Councilor Edwards for also taking part. This is the second time that the city is receiving a grant from the Community Mitigation Fund coming through the Mass Gaming Commission. And again, using these dollars to help offset the city's portion in funding design costs for the Rutherford Ave, Sullivan Square area. Jim Gillooly, Deputy Commissioner of the Boston Transportation Department, reminded us that the city has secured federal funding for the construction of the project and can basically use 80% of, has a 20% obligation to pay for design. This $200,000 would be in addition to a previous $250,000 to offset the city's 20% of the design costs. And the designs are now approaching 75% completion. So we had a number of questions on the progress and wanted to make sure that this got in before the end of the year so the city can continue working on transportation improvements that are much needed in that area of the city and citywide. So I would recommend passage and acceptance of this grant, docket 1538. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. At this time, Councilor Wu, Chair of the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation, seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 1538. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1538 has been passed. Madam Clerk, at this point, I'd like to go back and recognize Councilor Presley would like to speak on a previous docket. Any objections? Seeing none, Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
All right, thank you. Is it Mr. President today?
I'm not really sure what it is. But I want to, if something happens to the mayor today, does that mean I'm in charge? That's all I want to know.
Oh, my goodness. Well, thank you, Acting President.
Thank you.
I move to substitute the previous report on early education and care, docket number 1784. I just wanted to accommodate some minor edits and format changes that you will each find in front of you. First, I just want to thank Councilor Wu. When she was the president of the body, she did a series of transportation briefings which informed her advocacy and policy proposals and suggested that we do a similar format around the issue of early education and care. This is certainly not a genderized issue. This is critical to the stabilization of our families, the growth and development of our workforce and our economy, and each of the women counselors at the time, before two more joined us, had been focused on a specific area of early education and care. So we had a series of briefings and hearings in community, which have resulted in the production of this report of policy recommendations. I'm grateful for the partnership and the thoughtful work of my colleagues, Councilor Wu, Councilor Asabi George, happy birthday, Councilor Campbell, and just the opportunity to spotlight the need for expanded access to early education and care in Boston and to reduce disparities in our early education and workforce. This is an issue of consequence to many families and educators across our city. Every working family in Boston, especially those headed by women, need access to quality, affordable child care in order to maintain their careers and to make greater impacts in their fields. I do thank you in advance for your indulgence, because I am going to just speak for a minute. This is my final meeting, and I want these matters to be officially a part of the record for today. As a council that is looking to change policy around early learning, we need to consider the different access points and barriers for families of all models and all kinds. This report will serve as a starting point to solve these major challenges in our early education field. We know education and childcare are critical vehicles for social mobility, to a family's ability to access and maintain steady employment, further their education, and to seek out the necessary training that leads to good jobs, and to ensure that we do not overlook or ignore the needs of the providers, the operators, and educators in the early education and care industry. This report and its corresponding recommendations are the culmination of our work together, of our actively listening. And as I've done with every hearing, every report, and every major policy decision, we centered the voices of those most impacted by the issue. During a series of policy briefings that my Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities held last year, we heard from families, from caregivers, from researchers on a range of issues, from geographic inequities, cost barriers, and pay discrepancies in the early education field. Because of what we heard, these recommendations call for early learning to continue to be made a citywide priority, particularly in our push to achieve universal pre-K and to guarantee seats for every child under the age of 5. We've called for a review and update to citywide zoning regulations so that more family-based child care providers can have access to the space and the certification they need to provide care. This work requires committed partnership between municipal, state, and federal officials to secure funding to support this industry. I will remain a dedicated and active leader on this issue when I get to Washington, and I will lean in on this matter to ensure that we get the investments we need. We need an expansion of around-the-clock care to meet the needs of parents working non-traditional, non-standard hours who are furthering their education, and for families experiencing homelessness who need access to transportation and child care options that are in close proximity to the shelters. And among other recommendations, we call for increased investments in professional development opportunities to support providers as well as paraprofessionals. It is my goal that this report will serve as a blueprint for the city and a starting point for our collective work to address challenges facing our early education and care system. When we invest in our children and our families, we can improve our economy and be one step closer to closing the achievement gap and creating better health and life outcomes that impact the lives of every child in the city of Boston. Again, I thank you for your indulgence for a longer statement. There will be many more of them this meeting. I apologize in advance. And again, I thank you, all my colleagues, for your partnership.
Thank you, Council Presley, and that will remain on file, correct? At this point, Madam Chair, we also need to go back to docket number 1784.
83.
83, sorry.
Thank you. Councilor Kim Janey, Boston City Council District 7, December 12, 2018. Dear Madam Clerk, due to travel with colleagues for a learning journey in Israel, I am unable to attend today's City Council meeting. Since this is the last meeting of the year, I want to again take a moment to express my deep gratitude to Councilor Presley, soon to be Congresswoman Presley, for her friendship and her support during my first year in the Council. As the first woman of color of this body, Councilor Presley has broken down barriers, has made space for those who are often excluded, and has lifted up the voices of those who have been unheard for far too long. While I will miss her on the council, I wish her much success in Washington, and I look forward to our continued partnership as she continues to service to her community as a member of Congress. I would also like to wish my grandson, Jair Rogers, a happy birthday and blessed birthday. Please read this letter into the record. Sincerely, Kim Janey, Washington City Councilor, District 7.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I would like to recognize also our good friend Tito Jackson. Councilor Jackson, thank you for coming. Docket 1539, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Docket number 1539, message in order for the confirmation of the appointment of Jeffrey Gagne as an alternate member of the Boston Landmark Commission for a term expiring on June 30th, 2021.
Chair recognizes Councilor Wu, Chair of the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Councilor Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was the other docket that I mentioned earlier that we had a hearing on recently, and today I would like to recommend that we confirm the appointment of Jeffrey Gagnon as an alternate member of the Boston Landmarks Commission. At our hearing, we heard from Mr. Gagnon directly about his background and his interest in the role. He has been involved in the process on the community side. He has worked formally in this field with Preservation Massachusetts, with Historic Boston, and particularly overseen various specific projects in Dorchester, and therefore had a seat at the table already. We also heard from Director of the Office, Roseanne Foley, who's in the chamber with us today, about how much it would make a difference to have this role filled, that this has been a vacancy on the commission for a while, and that this would give the chair the ability to take breaks during meetings and make sure that they're reaching quorum every time. We talked a little bit about the bigger picture, too, that the commission, and this not necessarily directly from her words, but I'm now editorializing a little bit, that the commission and historic preservation needs more resources in the city because there's a huge backlog of study reports that is multiple years long of community-driven projects that have significance to the city that would that are important for the character of our neighborhoods, but are stuck in limbo because there isn't currently the funded capacity to get through those reports. So having more commissioners and more community volunteers makes a difference, but we also need to support on the staffing side to make sure that we're resolving these issues on a timely basis for everyone. So I was excited to get to know Jeffrey a little bit more and to hear that he has a great vision for the commission and for its partnership with the council. So would recommend confirmation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wu. Councilor Wu, Chair of Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation, seeks acceptance of the committee report and confirmation of the appointment of docket 1539. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1539 has been confirmed. Madam Clerk, docket 1735.
Thank you, Mr. President. Docket number 1735, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend a parkland acquisitions and renovations for communities known as Park Program Grant from the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, Division of Conservation Services, in the amount not to exceed $400,000 to be administered by the Boston Parks and Recreation Department. The grant will fund Phase 2 of the renovations to Harambee Park in Dorchester.
Chair recognizes Councilor O'Malley, Chair of the Committee on Environment, Sustainability, and Parks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I read my report, I'd like the record to reflect that this little section of real estate is boasting 100% attendance rate at the final council meeting of the year. So,
Duly noted.
thank you, Mr. President. I rise today in regard to docket 1735 for the Committee on Environment, Sustainability, and Parks. We held a hearing on December 10th. I wanted to thank the at-large council from South Boston, the at-large council from Dorchester for their participation and great questions. From the Parks Department, Aldo Guerin testified. This was for a PARC, which is an acronym PARC, which stands for Parkland Acquisitions and Renovations for Communities Program, grant from the Mass Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, Division of Conservation, and it will award a $400,000 grant to the City of Boston, which will then be administered by the Boston Parks and Recreation Department. The grant would fund part of Phase 2 of the renovation of Harambee Park in Dorchester. Harambee Park, formerly named Franklin Field, is located at 930 Blue Hill Avenue in Dorchester. It was established in 1892. I believe it is of the Council President's District. And there is a tremendous investment happening at Harambee Park. $20 million program all in. It's going to be about 10 years or so, 6 phases. Phase 1 is complete. This is partially funding Phase 2, which is about $3.3 million or $3.2 million. And This would cover $400,000 of it. I was particularly pleased to hear how this will reflect a great investment in the sustainability of the park, making sure that we have energy-efficient LED lights for pedestrian crossings, as well as other energy-efficient lighting for sports lights, at least one, possibly more water filling stations, as well as some real drainage and irrigation systems in our turf fields, which will allow for storm water runoff. Once this is completed, you're going to have a 45-acre pristine park, which will include basketball courts, cricket pitches, multi-purpose soccer, lacrosse fields, football field, Little League field, as well as play stations and play structures. This is something that obviously I wholeheartedly support. I really think that Harambe Park will be seen as one of the finest public spaces in Boston when all is said and done. Again, this is just phase 2, so we still have a lot of work to do, but I'm delighted to urge you all to support, accept, and expend this grant from the state. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Councilor O'Malley, at this time, Councilor O'Malley, Chair of the Committee on Environment Sustainability, seeks acceptance of the committee report and passage of docket 1735. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1735 has been passed.
Docket number 1655, order for hearing to listen to communities impacted by violence and trauma.
Chair recognizes Councilor Presley, Chair of the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Community. Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I thank you in advance for your indulgence, as I am offering a longer committee report than I would normally, since this will be my final, and it will be the final for the committee that I've chaired during my 8-year tenure here on the council. First, I want to thank the many community members who participated in our second listening-only hearing to lift up and to center the voices of those who have been impacted by violence in the city of Boston, and more notably, to speak to the issue that violence leaves in its wake, and that is trauma. First and secondhand trauma, residual trauma, intergenerational trauma that is choking at the full promise of our families, our communities, and our city. So I want to thank the 100 strong who participated in Monday night's listening only Community Voices hearing, especially our brave and brilliant young citizen activists from Teen Empowerment and from various Boston public schools. Special thanks to my colleagues who participated in the hearing, Councilor Wu, Councilor Sabi George, Flaherty, McCarthy, Edwards, and Zakum. And I thank Councilor Campbell and Janey for their letters of endorsement and support, despite the fact that they could not be there in person. To all the community-based organizations who have been doing this work on the front lines, who were represented at that hearing, who do this work every day, the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute, Tina Cherry, Azara Mendez, March for Our Lives Boston, Moms Demand Action, Violence in Boston, Hyde Square Task Force, Lipstick, Lip Gloss, and I could go on. It is really challenging to sum up the compelling and oft harrowing testimony we heard on Monday night. But I will say that, again, it reiterates how gun violence and trauma are choking at the promise of our city. The lives of our residents, and specifically communities of color, every person that came before us was a resident of either Roxbury, Mattapan, or Dorchester. And again, the residual impact of first and secondhand trauma that gun violence leaves in its wake is real. It is my hope, my prayer, my wish that we will get to a place where we are passing on and along more than intergenerational trauma, intergenerational poverty, and intergenerational poor public health outcomes. All forms of violence are interrelated and connected, and therefore approach to this issue must not only address the consequences and the aftermath and the symptoms, but thoughtfully and comprehensively get at the root causes. We need to pass comprehensive gun control, including background checks. We need to improve staffing levels for trauma services and prevention. But more important, the interrelated needs of school nurses and psychologists was reiterated over and over again. And as Councilor Wu later in her synopsis of the hearing said, it's not just about health coverage, but it is about access. And we heard that over and over again, both in community, but specifically in our schools. This movement that we are building across demographic lines and neighborhoods, it must continue to be survivor-led. I'm certain that this work will not end on the council. I know my colleagues will continue to fight this fight with me at the city and state level as I take this fight to Washington to ensure that survivors feel seen and heard, and that all families receive the healing and the justice that they deserve. Our work at all levels will require political will and courage. It will require that we continue to listen to those most impacted. I was struck by many in our community who asked what was the point of another hearing, and I do believe that Monday helped to answer that. As I said in my farewell address, someone has to ask the question, and we will keep asking the question until we get the answer. When we have the infrastructure, when we have the staffing levels, when we have the financial investment. So we will continue to ask the question until we get the answer, and that answer will be in the form of action. So until then, we'll follow up, we'll be transparent, and we'll hold ourselves accountable. And as I close, as the committee and founder and chair for the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, I do just want to highlight some of the incredible work we've done together the last 8 years. Expanding sex ed in our schools, lifting up the experiences of our girls, protecting immigration rights, ensuring that no matter what, we will fight to keep families together. We have built coalitions to take on liquor license reform, and every year we have pushed for more funding to have a nurse in every school. We have championed healthy school lunches and addressed school culture and discipline reform. We have stood up for elder services, which allow our seniors to live and age in community, and we have lifted up adult learning access challenges. These issues do not live in silos, but rather make up the totality of our experiences. We cannot solve the trauma from gun violence without investing in equitable schools that focus on teaching the whole child. I am humbled by the work that we have accomplished, but the work does not end here. This is not the last meeting. The work continues because the people closest to the pain should be the closest to the power, driving and informing the policy making. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Presley. Docket 1655 will be placed on file. Madam Clerk?
Docket number 1511, order for hearing regarding a zoning amendment to regulate the proximity of certain businesses to recovery facilities.
Chair recognizes Council Wu, Chair of the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Council Wu, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a pretty robust and extended hearing yesterday, and I'll defer to the co-sponsors who are here. This was the starting point for a discussion about the impact when it comes to the actual implementation of the will of the voters in legalizing cannabis and the quality of life in neighborhoods and also the specific communities that will be absorbing the new industry. We've had a lot of conversations on this subject in this room lately, and this one in particular, I want to thank Councilor Edwards, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor Asabi George for making sure that we're having the conversation on the recovery community and specifically the proximity to recovery facilities. You, Councilor Baker, also were an integral part of making sure that we were asking the right questions of each of the panels. So I'll defer to the sponsors on next steps, but it was a great conversation and one that I'm looking forward to continuing in the new year. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Wu. At this time, Chair recognizes Councilor Edwards.
To thank the chair of the committee for having a timely hearing, despite the fact that it was at the end of the year, and allowing us to have what I thought was very pertinent, appropriate conversation about the emerging industry. At the hearing, we heard from various sides. We heard from folks who are actually the individuals who are trying to locate their recreational facility near a recovery center. We heard from the folks in the recovery center. We heard from the administration, specifically the head of Health and Human Services and the head of ONS. And we also heard what I think was the most important voice from the day, and those are the folks who are survivors and thrivers from addiction, who came out and said that they supported and voted to legalize marijuana and said openly there is a place for marijuana in our city, if not our state, but that the specific location of this particular recreational site right next to a recovery center seemed inappropriate. And also, honestly, it was helping us to really hone in the conversation. No longer are we, or should we, be demonizing the industry. No longer are we, or should be, demonizing the use of marijuana. The question is really how we as a city move forward together and zone appropriately to ensure that we balance the interests of those who want to access, as adults, the use of marijuana, those who want to build a business and have income for themselves, but also the safety of the most vulnerable populations. I thought there was a very vibrant conversation, and I just want to highlight Katie O'Leary's testimony especially, who was a person who personally walked the street that the recreational facility is trying to go to. She would have passed by that, as she said, because she was using or going to North Suffolk Mental Health to get help with her addiction and to deal with that. And she said, I know what it feels like, among anybody else, to be the person who needs those services, but then also to turn around and be providing those services. And I am telling you, having a recreational facility or pot shop on the way that close to where we are trying to get treatment would have hindered her recovery. And again, she admitted she voted and would probably vote again to legalize marijuana. So we are we're past demonization. We're talking about practicality and making sure that when we do zoning, we do it in a way that is the best for the city of Boston. The other thing that I think is really important and why this conversation will continue, and as you brought up yourself, Councilor Baker, is the definition of recovery center. You know, we heard from Manny, head of Health and Human Services, we don't have enough of them. But when we're talking about zoning, the definition is key and vital. 90 of them are actually licensed by the state. Of those, I'm not sure how many actually provide Suboxone or methadone in their services, and maybe zeroing in on only those that have the most vulnerable folks coming directly out of detox, coming directly off of probation, should be the ones that are somewhat in a bubble or somewhat protected. Also noted in the hearing, and I think it's worth it, the Gaffin Foundation submitted wonderful written testimony and noting that this is not abnormal. Colorado has 700 recreational sites, and they also have a buffer zone of 1,000 feet between schools and also recovery centers. So does, I don't know in terms of the distance, but Los Angeles has a version, so does Arizona, and so does New Mexico. So having some sort of site protection is not abnormal, and hasn't prevented the thriving businesses in other states. So it's the balance that we need to strike. It's the balance and conversation we will continue into the future, and I encourage then and I encourage now. It's about adult conversation. We cannot be demonizing each other, calling people NIMBYs or bigots or ignorant who may be cautious about marijuana and recreational facilities any more than we should be putting out false science, saying horrible things about the use of marijuana or those who use it and being willfully ignorant. It's time for adult conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Anyone else wishing to speak on this matter? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, docket 1511 will be placed on file.
Docket number 0169, order for hearing regarding the governance structure of the Boston School Committee.
Chair recognizes Councilor Anissa Sabi George, Chair of the Committee on Education. Councilor George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman Baker. And, thank you all who were here last night. Yesterday evening, I held a hearing regarding the governance structure of the Boston School Committee. I'd like to thank Councilors O'Malley, McCarthy, Baker, and Edwards for attending this hearing and for their thoughtful questions of our panelists. The first panel provided us a snapshot of the past, detailing what the Boston School Committee looked like as an elected body. We were joined by President of the Boston Municipal Research Bureau, Sam Tyler, as well as former Boston City Councilor Larry DeCara, who happened to write his 1971 graduation dissertation on the history of the Boston School Committee, which he was able to access a copy of.
I think he wanted to read it last night, too.
I have excerpts for anyone of that document for anyone who'd like to read it. Through their historical description and timeline, we were told that the once 13-member elected body was such a disaster that it negatively impacted families and schools in the district. They both agreed that the answer in improving the Boston Public Schools, the school committee, is not going back to an elected. It was argued that having an appointed body holds one individual accountable, the mayor, and that it would be only a political stepping stone for others. Our second panel consisted of community advocates and individuals who care deeply about education in the city of Boston, and unlike the first panel, believe that it is time to revisit the conversation on which structure works best for our students, and most of them agreed that we should go back to an elected body. We were joined by Tanisha Sullivan, President of the NAACP Boston branch, Jose Lopez, the chair of the NAACP Education Committee of the Boston branch, Ruby Reyes of Boston Education Justice Alliance, Edith Bazil, who's from the Black Educators Alliance of Massachusetts and retired Boston teacher, and Mary Battenfeld from Quest Quality Education for Every Student, who's also a BPS parent. While the NAACP Boston has not taken an official position on a particular governance structure, they do believe that the time is now for the city to have a public and transparent conversation that will lead to greater academic outcomes and I think a more responsive Boston School Committee. On the other hand, Beja, Beam, and Quest have all officially taken the position of needing to go back to an elected body and to give the right of vote to the people. They argue that because the current school committee is appointed, they vote on issues and agendas the way they are appointed to vote. I will also say that Quest in particular, I think, has taken a while to get to a position where they prefer an elected body and have remained neutral for many, many years. And we've heard this conversation happen at some of my community meetings across the city this fall, but in other settings too, where folks have very negative memories of the formerly elected school committee and recognize some of the real differences between some of the procedures that happen when we compare an elected to an appointed, but also really feel that the appointed body has not been as responsive as they should be to our families and our students of the district. The act to change the school committee structure would be a lengthy one. Time is a significant barrier to immediate change, and a charter change would be required if we were to go back to an elected body. There is a need certainly for further public and transparent conversations. The process itself might be long, but there are a few things that we can immediately start with, and I think there is some general consensus about the process of nominating recommendations through the Citizens Nominating Panel for the Boston School Committee. This panel and that process does need to be more transparent. We don't know how. There's very, very little understanding of how individuals are chosen to be a part of the nominating panel and what their credentials are to make recommendations to the mayor on future representatives and members of the Boston School Committee. I think that it's important to also note that in this most recent appointment process, nominating process, only 7 applications, what we heard last night, were 7 applications were presented to the nominating panel for 2 openings. We think of a city our size with such a great interest in public education in Boston that we certainly would have seen more. We know that they receive applications, they hold interviews, and they make recommendations to the mayor, but outlining the basis and the process and understanding the formula and the conversation that goes into those conversations and those deliberations would be important for us to know. But in general, we heard both from the panels, both panels, and we heard through public testimony that our residents, our families, our students want to be heard. They would like to have a voice. They would like to have a choice. And I think that it's important for us to take a closer look at this current governance structure and to understand ways that we can make some immediate small changes, some incremental changes, and to have that more thoughtful discussion about the possibility for future and whether or not it's a good decision to go into a discussion around charter change. I thank you, Chair, for your indulgence.
Thank you, Councilor Sabi George. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this matter? Seeing none, docket 0169 will be placed on file. Personnel orders, Madam Clerk.
Docket number 1786, Councilor Campbell for Councilor Sabi George.
Councilor Sabi George seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 1786. All in favor said aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1786 has been passed. Late files, Madam Clerk. I am informed by the clerk that there are 7 late file matters, which in the absence of an objection will be added to the agenda. Hearing no objections, the matters are added to the agenda. The clerk will read the first late file matter. Okay. So go back to the green sheets. Okay. We're going to get to the late files after that. We're going to do the green sheets first. Anybody wishing to remove a matter from the green sheets may do so at this time. Yes. Chair recognizes Councilor Presley.
You read my mind. Good job, Mr. President. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to pull docket number 1663 from page 6 of 16. And you want me to do all of them now? Okay. I would like to pull docket number 1664 from page 6 of 16. I would like to pull docket number 1666 from page 6 of 16. And I would like to pull docket number 1667 from page 6 of 16.
Councilor Presley, would you like to poll your committee?
Sure,
Bring mi-
yeah, I think that's the policy.
Thank you. Counselor Presley?
Present.
No.
Yes.
To remove, yes.
I'm atrophied, y'all. You're like, get her out of here.
No. Counselor O'Malley? Yes. Counselor O'Malley, yes. Counselor Wu?
Yes.
Counselor Wu, yes. And Counselor Zachem? Counselor Zachem, yes. And Counselor Asabi George?
Yes.
Counselor Asabi George. The committee has been polled, and all are in favor of bringing these matters before the body. And
Thank you.
Counselor-elect Congresswoman, Counselor, would you like me to read these dockets into the record
Yes.
so you can discuss them?
Sure,
Thank you. In the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, docket number 1663, sponsored by the mayor. Message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $1,809,008 in the form of the Title C Nutrition Program, FFY 2019, awarded by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, passed through the Mass Executive Office of Elder Affairs, to be administered by the Elderly Commission. The grant will fund home-delivered and congregate meals for seniors in Boston. It was referred to committee on November 28, 2018. In the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, docket number 1664, sponsored by the mayor, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $1,363,864.32 in the form of a grant for the State Elder Lunch Program awarded by the Mass Executive Office of Elder Affairs to be administered by the Elderly Commission. The grant will fund meals for seniors in Boston, referred to committee on November 28, 2018. In the Committee on Healthy Women, Family, and Communities, docket number 1666, sponsored by the mayor, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $493,379 in the form of a grant for the Title III-E caregivers awarded by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, passed through the Mass Executive Office of Elder Affairs, to be administered by the Elderly Commission. The grant will fund sub-grants for caregiver services to seniors and grandparents raising their grandchildren. Once again, referred to the committee on November 28, 2018. And Healthy Women, in the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, 1667, sponsored by the mayor. Message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $300,000 in the form of a grant from Boston Children's Hospital to be administered by the Office of Food Access. The grant will fund the Boston EAT program, improve the health and well-being of children and families disproportionately impacted by inequities in health and the social determinants of health. Referred to committee on November 28, 2018.
Chair recognizes the Chair of Healthy Women and Families and Communities, Councilor Presley. Councilor, would you like to speak on all four of them, then we'll take the votes after? Or would you like to speak, vote, speak,
I'll speak
vote?
on all of them.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
thank you.
I mean, we're filibustering here today, but it's all for a good cause. So, thank you, Madam Chair. And Madam Clerk, I'd hope to be able to hold the hearing on this grant to highlight the amazing work of the Elderly Commission. This grant supports social, ombudsman, health prevention, caregiver, and especially nutrition services to our Boston seniors. This will especially fund the much-needed resources and services required to deliver meals to our seniors. This portion of the grant money will support the NSIP, Nutrition Services Incentive Program, Meals on Wheels, as well as congregate nutrition lunch sites, which allow the commission to meet seniors in communities and centers and churches, which we've all visited throughout our districts. This program not only delivers meals to our homebound seniors, but also hosts group meals at over 45 meal sites around Boston. This program includes regular wellness checks and assessments while also providing nutrition and the opportunity to build community. As the chair of the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, I move to suspend the rules and to accept this grant today. Docket 1663, this grant in the same vein, this grant is in the same vein as the previous docket, 1663. This will essentially fund the much-needed resources and services.
Yeah.
It just allows us to have greater capacity for the same resources for what I just detailed. Then for docket number 1666, this grant will directly tackle the inequities in our cities as we see our elderly finding themselves more and more as the primary caretakers and givers of their grandchildren. This will essentially fund the much-needed resources and services required to help our elders stay in community and to support and raise their grandchildren. We see this as a growing phenomenon. There are so many families of this model, and certainly the opioid epidemic has contributed to this considerably. So these resources and a dedicated wraparound support for this growing number of grandparents raising grandchildren is so important. This program will provide aid in spaces like transportation costs, food services, school costs, and again, all the demands that come along with raising a child. And then finally, and I move to suspend the rules and accept this grant today. And then our final one here, this is docket number 1667. This grant will fund the Boston EAT program, which works to tackle the inequities primarily faced by children and families of color when it comes to access to healthy food options. This office plays a major role in ensuring we have healthy food options in our stores and farmers markets and targeted neighborhoods. If we truly aim to build healthier families and communities, we need to be more inclusive and where people can have purchasing power, especially for those who do not already have access to fresh and healthy foods. And again, I move to suspend the rules and accept this grant today, and I thank everyone for your indulgence. We were asked to expedite these grants because they are critically needed.
Thank you, Council Presley. At this time, Chair of Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, Council Presley would like to suspend and pass docket number 1663. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no, nay. Seeing none opposed, docket 1663 has been suspended and passed. Chair of Healthy Women and Families and Communities, Council Presley would like to suspend and pass docket number 1664. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1664 has been suspended and passed. Docket 1666, Council Presley, Chair of Healthy Women and Family and Communities, would like to suspend and pass. Docket 1666. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 1666 has been passed. Docket 1667, Chair of Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, Council Presley would like to suspend and pass docket 1667. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Docket 1667 has been suspended and passed. Madam Clerk, would you please read docket 1665?
Thank you, Mr. President. In the committee on page 9 of 16, in the Committee of Jobs, Wages, and Workforce Development, docket number 1665, sponsored by the mayor. Message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $500,000 in the form of a grant for the planning for the Economic Mobility Lab awarded by the Rockefeller Foundation to be administered by the mayor's office. The grant will fund the cost of researching and planning an economic mobility lab to advance economic mobility and security for lower and lower middle class Bostonians. Filed, referred to committee on November 28th, 2018.
Madam Clerk, please poll the committee.
Thank you. Councilor Baker.
Yes.
Counselor Baker, yes. Counselor Edwards? Counselor Edwards, yes. Counselor Flynn? Counselor Janey? Counselor Presley? Yes. We have a majority.
That's right. Chair recognizes Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and in being sensitive to the time restraints we have, I'd like to suspend and pass this order here. It's for $500,000. It's for the Economic Mobility Lab, which is an initiative within the mayor's office which aims to advance the economic mobility of Bostonians by testing innovative approaches and pilot projects, evaluating their effectiveness in helping people move up the economic ladder and scaling what works best. With this $500,000 grant from the Rockefeller Foundation, the lab will be able to hire a full-time staff member to lead engagement and management implementation of pilot projects. This budget also includes innovation funds to actually bring pilot projects to fruition.
So at this time, Councilor Baker moving for passage of docket 1665.
Yes.
All those in favor of passage of 1665, say aye. All those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. 1665 has passed. Madam Clerk, please call. Is it the consent agenda? There are no matters to the consent agenda, correct? But there are 7 late file matters that, in the absence of objection. Seeing and hearing no objection to the late files, Madam Clerk, please read the late files. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Flaherty. Offered by the first late file, offered by Councilor Lydia Edwards and Ayanna Presley. Resolution relative to the establishment of an independent commission on equal opportunity and elimination of systematic bias in the workplace. Mr. President, would you like me to read first and last?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Whereas every employee of the City of Boston deserves a safe and healthy workplace, free of structural bias and swift in addressing incidents of racism, sexism, or discrimination by age, orientation, origin, or ability. Therefore, be it resolved that the Boston City Council supports the establishment of an independent commission on equal opportunity in the workplace. Be it further resolved, such a commission shall review complaints of employees made against a city department. The City Council or a quasi-public agency in the City of Boston develop protocols and standards for independent investigations, issues requests for proposals, retain investigators, monitor implementation of department diversity and inclusion plans, and binding legal decrees. Filed in council on December 12, 2018.
Chair recognizes Councilor Edwards.
Thank you very much. I wanted to make sure that when we talk about, well, let me give some context to this. We are in the middle of trying to investigate and look at the Boston Fire Department and look at the ways in which systemically it has, well, come to what it is today, which is a very non-diverse city department that does not reflect all of the diversity in Boston. It has about 16 women, most of them are women of color, and there are certain systemic and real issues and concerns that have been brought to light, not just now in this administration, but for many administrations. And so there is a point where you start to see that the issue is not between two employees or not between or having to do with a specific kind of administration. It has to do with the system. It has to do with the inherited issues of racism, sexism, and the way in which we have struggled as a city with those issues, and how that they are reflected, unfortunately, in some of our city departments with our lack of diversity, and still how they struggle with dealing with racism, sexism, and other isms. So instead of dealing with the fact that we are eventually going to get a report, I believe, assessing what's going on, and instead of just talking about the Boston Fire Department as the issue that should be resolved, I think we need to talk about how we deal with independent investigations. There was one that was called for in this incident. And so what happened? Well, specifically, actually a couple things. The city responded with the issues of the controversy in the Boston Fire Department. There was a $500,000 amount of money with no plan set aside to do something we don't know for who knows and when. So that's one response. The other response was to have a report written. The standards for those report, I'm told, are attorney-client privilege. So I have no idea what those standards are, neither will most people. When it was due, how it will get here, also not clear. More importantly, though, it's how we chose who's going to write it. We luckily have a wonderful set of attorneys who are on retainer who are excellent at their jobs. This is not a criticism of their character or their ability to defend the city at all costs. But when you take one of our defense counsels who already have direct contracts with the city of Boston and then turn around and ask that very same person to say, you defend us all the time. Matter of fact, you're defending the Boston Fire Department right now. But in this context, we need you to act as an independent investigator. Just act arm's length. The same people that you met with and talked to defend, you're going to act neutrally towards and be able to investigate truly and honestly. I question whether that brings about the trust that is necessary for us as a city, for us as Bostonians, to truly believe that the administration is able to investigate itself. Why put any attorney in that position? I would struggle with that as an attorney. If I defended legal services for years to turn around and then investigate my colleagues or the folks who I've worked with for years and then do that in an independent way. What very likely will happen is a wonderfully thorough report about things in which we could and should be doing. But it will not be a report that subjects the city of Boston to any form of liability, because you just can't do that as a defense attorney. You won't do that as a defense attorney. But as an independent investigation, you should not have to worry about that. You should be out there saying everything, good, bad, whatever liability that it results in. And my concern is that we are not going to get that. My other concern is this is the fourth report about this particular agency. The fact that you've had so many reports about an agency or the systemic biases within there means that despite the reports, despite the knowledge, things are not happening. Who do you hold accountable for that not to happen? The fact that people are not able to maintain their jobs and able to grow in the workforce without having implemented some of the very important decrees that we've agreed to or reports is a problem. It is a systemic problem. It relies and lies on no particular administration. So what this is hoping to do is bring about a systemic solution, one in which we, as a body, with the administration, create an independent commission that, when these issues come about, not, again, this is not a me versus somebody in particular kind of issue, but one in which we see that this department is struggling with this in a systemic way, that they could then go to an independent commission. That commission then would RFP and define for us what that independent investigation should look at. We wouldn't be wondering what the standards were. They would set those standards, they could RFP those standards, and then other people can bid on that. That was the other issue too. No one got the opportunity to be the independent investigator. It was just given to somebody. So I want this open, I want this transparent, I want people to be able to come forward and be able to help the city of Boston deal with the systemic issues. And an independent commission, one where they are not directly connected already or paid by the city to defend the city, is true independence. I think ultimately the goal is to be able to say to the public, when we say we're going to do an investigation and figure out what went wrong, we will only gain the trust. And people will believe us when they get that end result. And this independent commission can help to then monitor how those results, those recommendations, those individuals are held accountable. This does not put it then on coworkers to have to look at coworkers. It does not put it on the administration to have to then target any individual. It allows for the independent commission to look at it. This is beyond the Boston Fire Department. It could be the police department. It could be looking at the school committee. It allows for us to have an arm's length analysis about the systemic issues and concerns that the city of Boston still struggles with. So I hope that we will resolve as a body today that we should at least consider about having an independent commission. Of course, because it's the end of the year, there's no ordinance before us, there's no actual direct body designed, but I'll be bringing it, and I'm sure some of my colleagues will also together be bringing up something in the next year. This is because when we look at what the end result is, for us to truly trust and believe the city of Boston is going to hold itself accountable, we really need some independence. We really need folks who are not directly paid already by the city of Boston to defend it, to be a part of that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Councilor Presley, would you like to speak on this?
I'll try.
Chair recognizes Councilor Presley.
Thank you, and I want to thank the lead sponsor here for her leadership and partnership on this, and for her eloquent and impassioned contextualizing of how we find ourselves and why at this moment, and what has been the prompt for this proposal. Again, it is so much bigger than any one department or agency. I think it is about institutionalizing, it is about standardizing, it is about codifying a system and a process that builds trust, that institutionalizes our integrity for this process, and again, fosters the public trust in that process. The creation of an independent commission on equal opportunity and elimination of systemic bias in the workplace is one step towards truly building a safe and inclusive work environment for every one of our employees. We could be a model for the country, truly. You know, more specifically, 2 months ago, our entire city came together and exhausted every avenue possible to resist the appointment of Brett Kavanaugh. Last week, this very body passed a historic harassment and discrimination policy for the city council because we acknowledged then that our workplace must never tolerate inappropriate behavior. We would hold one another accountable. So in the interest of supporting all workers, in the interest of supporting all survivors, every employee in the city of Boston deserves that same support, the same protections that we afford city council staff, and must be true for all of our city workers. In speaking with the women in the Boston Fire Department, and again, this is not about any one agency or department, that's been the prompt for this specific proposal, but it is systemic, it is cultural. These are challenges that are pervasive and culturally ingrained, and it's going to take, you know, thoughtful will and an approach and transparency to dig it out from its root and to address it. And speaking with the women in the Boston Fire Department, though, specifically, we heard, you know, very harrowing experiences from them. And again, they're not unique to them. They just happen to come forward. And so imagine, you know, already disclosing something so painful and the shame and the isolation and the stigma that can go along with that. And then doing a job every day that's about keeping the public safe when you continue to feel unsafe. So a commission would afford us the opportunity to look at these cultural and systemic issues because when we overlook them and choose to ignore it or to fail it, we're not living up to our mission and our values as a city and as a council. A commission would create a dedicated avenue for others to share their experiences, to learn about their options, and for us to address these things in the light of day, and again, to strengthen and to restore trust in our processes and our system. So I hope our colleagues, that you'll consider supporting it. This is no different than many of the other issues that we have taken on as a body. And I do think that we should exhaust every tool at our disposal to support all workers and to ensure that they feel that they're in a safe and healthy workplace environment. And again, I thank Councilor Edwards, and I also want to thank not only the brave women of the Boston Fire Department who come forward, but also Megan Irons for her work, which initially brought this to the attention of the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Presley. At this time, first late file matter will be placed on file.
Second late file from Ed Flynn, Boston City Council, District 2, December 12th. Dear Madam Clerk, I regret to inform you that I am unable to attend today's City Council meeting as I am currently on a learning expedition in Israel. As this is the last council meeting of the year, I would like to once again offer my sincerest gratitude to Councilor Presley for her leadership and service to the City of Boston. It has been an honor to serve with her and witness her commitment to social and economic justice for all. I wish her great success in Washington, and I know she will work hard to represent the people of Boston and District 7. Thank you again, and I request this letter be read into record. Sincerely, Ed Flynn, Boston City Council, District 2.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Second late file will be placed on file.
Late file number 3, Councilor Mark Siomo, Boston City Council, District 9. Dear Madam Clerk, due to travel with colleagues in Israel, I am unable to attend the City Council meeting. Sincerely, Mark Siomo, Boston City Council.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Can you please place a third late file matter on file and read the fourth?
Fourth late file, Councilor Timothy P. McCarthy, Boston City Council, District 5. Dear Clerk Feeney and President Baker, regrettably, I will not be attending today's hearing, but will review the tape at a later date. Maureen and I are proudly attending our son's graduation from the United States Army Infantry School in Fort Benning, Georgia. Please wish my council colleagues all the best for a happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year. Sincerely, Timothy McCarthy, City Councilor, District 5.
Do you really think he's going to review the tape? Would like to place the fifth late file matter on file, please.
Fifth late file, that's fourth, yeah. Is that, I think that's fourth, yes. In the office of Councilor Ayanna Pressley, Boston City Councilor at Large, on December 12, 2018. Dear Madam Clerk, please be advised that I am resigning my position as an at-large Boston City Councilor effective 5 p.m. on Wednesday, January 2nd, 2019. It has been an honor to serve the City of Boston in this role, and I look forward to future partnerships with this august body. Sincerely, Ayanna Pressley. That's number
Do you wish to
5.
speak, Council Presley?
Oh, no.
Okay. Your light is on. Will you please place the sixth late file the fifth late file matter on?
The sixth late file, December 12, 2018. Councilor Campbell for Councilor Baker.
Councilor Baker seeks suspension of the rules and passage of the sixth late file matter. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it.
And the order has passed.
The order has passed. Thank you.
The seventh late file, the Office of the City Clerk, the City of Boston, Office of the City Clerk, University Accountability Report from 2018 through 2019 statistics. And that just dates, so that's just placed on file.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Will you please place the seventh late file matter on file? The consent agenda. There are 0 late file matters.
Oh, I have one more.
Oh, sorry.
The eighth late file is from the Boston Groundwater Trust. Subject to Boston Groundwater Trust, the annual report and update. Dear Clerk Feeney, as founding authority that created the Boston Groundwater Trust, please accept the annual report and update of our activities. On behalf of myself and the Board of Trustees, I would like to thank you for your continued support, which enables us to continue preserving the foundations of Boston's historic structures. Very truly yours, Christian Simonelli, Executive Director.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Will you place the eighth late file on file? The consent agenda, there are 0 late file matters. The chair moves for adoption of the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The consent agenda is adopted. Is there anyone that wishes to make a statement today? Oh, Chair recognizes Councilor Asabi George.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just very quickly want to note, as our last meeting and the year winds down, that I think we have 2 Northeastern co-ops, one in my office, Megan Camillo, and then 1 central staff, Kim Noe, who will be returning back to school. I just want to wish them well, thank them both. Special thanks for Megan, who's been in our office this semester, but I know Kim's also been very supportive on central staff. Want to wish them both a happy return to school, and thank them for their dedication to our work over this last few months.
Thank you, Councilor George. And I would like to wish you a happy birthday from your colleagues and us.
Thank
Happy
you.
birthday. Memorials. Now I'd like to ask all guests and all members to... Councilor O'Malley. That's okay. You have the floor, Councilor O'Malley.
To note that this Friday will be the first official day of the plastic bag ordinance going into effect in the city of Boston. And I am incredibly grateful for my partnership with the at-large council from Rosendale. We had a very laborious, but nevertheless, I think, effective outreach process as we were drafting the legislation, working on that, as well as a whole host of other issues, as we are quite capable of multitasking in this body. But really leading this body, leading from this body, all of us, and even the newer members who that didn't take a vote at the time, but were certainly part and parcel of getting this thing done. It's going to be a remarkable thing in the city of Boston. And I'm grateful to the mayor's leadership in working and the folks that he's put in, particularly in Chief Chris Cook's cabinet, who've been really focused on this. And I just think that I've been spending the week sort of looking at a lot of trees and seeing plastic bags caught in trees. And God willing, 1 year from now, we're going to see those numbers diminish by leaps and bounds. So I'm proud that my team and I have given, over the last year and a half, we've given out nearly 7,000 reusable shopping bags at Election Day, at events, at senior events. Wonderful groups like ABCD. I know Josh Young was here earlier. He's still here. They've got more that they're giving out, and a real focus, particularly on low-income communities, to make sure that everyone has access to them. So this has been something that, you know, there's going to be some getting used to for certain folks. There's no doubt about it, but it's been a great thing and a great celebration of people working together to both do something about environmental justice while at the same time making sure that we're able to take care of everyone and make sure everyone has access to reusable bags. So I'm grateful to all of you for our communal work on this stuff and look forward to implementation happening in 48 hours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Malloy. And I would also like to just prematurely congratulate Councilor Zakem. Good luck on, you know, whenever that bundle of joy comes. My mother told me you'll never experience love until you're holding your own child. So keep that in the back of your mind. And also, I would like to congratulate again Congresswoman-elect Ayanna Pressley from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure from everybody on this body. Good luck down there. Your successes are our successes. So congratulations. And I would also like to recognize Council Zakem for what do you rise, Council Zakem?
Unanimous consent to make a very brief statement.
You have the floor.
I want to join our colleagues in obviously recognizing Councilor Isabi George's birthday today and Councilor Edwards' birthday tomorrow. And hopefully we'll have another birthday, as you just mentioned, to announce in the next couple of days. And also just to add my congratulations in the spirit of joyousness. I don't want to digress too much, but it's an exciting last day, and I'm proud to be here with the perfect attendance side of the room today. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Zakem. Now I'd like to ask all guests and all members to rise. We will now adjourn today's meeting in the memory of the following individuals. For Council Flynn and Council Flaherty, retired Boston Fire Department Captain Hubert Joe McGrath. For Council Flaherty, Flora Iola and Blanche D. Spitz. For Councilor, which is Ryan Spitz's, Council Flaherty's Chief of Staff's grandmother. For Councilor Isabi George, Todd J. Dorsett. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. The chair now moves adjournment C, nay, DA, which is what I have to say. I'm not really sure what that means, Maureen. We can circle back on that. That's our last day. Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Council is adjourned. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.